It's 2 minutes past time. I want to welcome everyone that's here from our audience and our panelists in whatever latitude or elevation you find yourself on the globe. Wonderful to have you here again for the third seminar in a series of international climate webinars organized by the Institute for Doctoral Studies in the Visual Arts. My name is Dejan Lukic. I'm one of the core faculty members and co-organizers of this series with Professor Bruce Glavovic from New Zealand. We have a wonderful lineup today, yet again, of the speakers from different parts of the world. We will begin with Professor Andreas Weber, who is right now in Italy, who will talk to us about atmosphere as breath and us as atmosphere, I assume. Then we will continue with Chef Nephi Craig, who will speak from Western Apache in Arizona about colonialism as a shapeshifter figure and the indigenous perspectives that remedy damages of this violent figure. And finally, a Maori leader, Piripi Kingi Waretini, from Aotearoa, New Zealand. He will talk about iconography of Maori spirituality, especially as it relates to a specific aphorism that he extracted, which embodies interconnectedness to all life, of all life. And Piripi is having some internet issues right now. He's trying to figure out, and he will jump in, hopefully, at the right time at the end. I appreciate you all being here, of course, and like I said, for Andreas, it's evening. For Nephi, it's morning. For Piripi, it's very early morning. So good to have you here at this time. So I'll let Andreas take over the screen now. We cannot see you, the audience, but we know you're here. Appreciate you're here. Andreas will speak for 30 minutes, and then we will have 15 minutes time for questions and answer. This will happen after each presenter. I ask you to write your comments or questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box, that little Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom. You can find it there, and then I'll read it out loud for everyone. Andreas, please go ahead.
Okay, yes. Yeah, thank you, Dejan. And I'm going to share my screen and start my presentation. And I'll try to show why I think it would be good to understand the atmosphere as breath. And what you can see here on in this first picture is probably what we would roughly all agree is an image of the atmosphere. We're looking up, we're looking somehow in the distance at something blue, at something crisscrossed with Anthropocenic signs, these jet trails. And it seems to be somehow very far away. It's like a screen somewhere. And now I want to show you another perspective on the atmosphere, which is this. So Dejan, you see, I'm going right into what you were already supposing would be my message, to say that actually we have to consider ourselves as living beings, as the atmosphere. And I'll show you, this is a little video, so please enjoy this little video. I'll show it to you. So it has immediately some features which also belong to what is going on in the atmosphere or as the atmosphere. So we see a butterfly with clear traces of a lived life on the wings. In late summer on a cow parsley, a blue, although it's brown, but it's a blue taxonomically. And the butterfly drinks nectar and thereby is pollinating the flower. And I would like to show the video again, and please do something now if you didn't do it already. While you watch it, go into your emotions, or you could also say go into your heart. Go to your experience, your feeling of nature in bloom, of the hate of summer, maybe of late summer, fading summer. And while you watch it, try to go into this feeling. And what I will try to explain in the remaining part of my lecture is that all these perspectives, all these elements, the blue sky, the transparent air, the blossom, the flower, the butterfly, and the experiencing self, which is in all this, are all parts of the picture, or they are all equivalent perspectives on one undivisible whole. And it is interesting to see that in ancient Greek, the word butterfly, psyche, psyche, did not only denote the insect, but was also the word for soul, which it is still, psyche. But it is also the word for breath. Butterfly is soul, and butterfly is breath. And I would really like to follow the profound wisdom of this poetic expression, of this poetic diversity in binding together different aspects of something which ultimately is profoundly related. So when we talk about the atmosphere, we open up other questions which we actually have stopped to be asking, or which the dominating scientific culture has stopped to be asking. What is a butterfly? What actually is a butterfly? What actually is a living being? Or what is life? No answer from biology. If you ask a biologist, he either he is a freak like me and he will start to give you his ideas, but in the majority of cases, they will tell you that this question is too big for biology, so they don't think about it. And of course, what is soul? What is the self? What is our experiencing self? What is the experiencing self in the butterfly? And what actually is breath? So all these are questions which I, in a sort of provocative tone here, suggest that the dominating scientific paradigm does not know the answer for, and actually does not want to look for the answer. And this leads to this bifurcation, or this big binary, which you all know from your personal life and which we all know from our professional philosophical thinking and approaches, that the world is split into the area of blind or dead matter, or abstract concepts, and the realm of meaning, which is not to be explained, which is somehow private, which is difficult to address, and which David Chalmers in the mid-1990s framed as the hard problem of consciousness, the problem why there is meaningful experience. And we could also say that it's the butterfly problem, or it is the problem of the blue in the atmosphere, which always comes when we think about these things, when we encounter these things, when we actually live these things, these relations. But it has been pushed to the side by the dominant paradigm of explaining the world. So it has also been pushed aside by contemporary climate science, of course. This is the blind spot in the dominant approach to the climate situation. So the question actually remains open. The question is, what actually is the atmosphere? Of course, everybody, most of you, all of you, would stand up and say, okay, I'll explain you. It's this load of gases and water, and you can characterize it on a chemical level, but that is not enough. And so we have to look again, we have to look deeper, or we have to look not only from the outside, but we also have to look from the inside, as we are intimately connected to the atmosphere, because we are breathing beings. We are beings who create ourselves in togetherness with other beings, with all other beings, by breath, as being the atmosphere. It is difficult to find this other approach, to find this experiential, relational, shared approach, because we have been taught from early childhood on that we can only understand life, reality as such, and also life in it, if we separate it into distinct functional mechanical modules. What you see here is the classical simple model of a biological cell, of an organic cell, of a body cell, which many kids have been taught in school. I have been confronted with this. I learned it like this. And when my son one day came home from school and presented me the same model, the cell as factory, I was actually shocked, because I somehow optimistically had thought that this was something which belonged to my past and the civilization's past, but it was not the case. So what you see here is biology 101 from mid-grade school, and I think some of you probably have had this this image, this metaphor. This is taken from a real school test. I left out the questions, but it's drawn after a real item, and you see that separation and industrial production and competition and top-down control reign this biological idea. And what you also see is that the body cell is fueled by carbon. Carbon is burned in order to generate energy. And we all know that this is obviously wrong. We are not eating carbon. And we don't have steam engines in our cells. But this also lends an image to how we conceive of the atmosphere, because the atmosphere is that into which this exhaust pipe, this chimney, blows the waste, the gas, the smoke. And it's somewhere out there, and it doesn't have at all anything to do with the living being. And I repeat again, it's not my It's not a caricature. It's not my ironic fantasy. This is what children learn in school. And then they are prepared to see in the atmosphere something which is very far away, which doesn't have really anything to do with them, and which is more something like a huge climate compressor, a huge air condition, which is also a thing which runs on fossil fuels. But in reality, a living being does not look like this. A living being looks like this. That's a spring meadow from the area I'm right now at. I'm right now in, but it's not that far here. So this is still some time to go until it will look like this. And that is the reality of ecosystems. And as you probably observe in yourself, when you look at this, there is a reaction in you. So you don't look at this in the same way you look at the model of the cell which burns carbon. But you look at this in a much more relaxed or much more joyful way, because you recognize yourself in the exchange in which you actually stand with the living biosphere. So this meadow is a place where a multitude of processes of creating their own identities exchange their matter through exchanging breath. And this meadow wouldn't be possible if there was not the invisible phase above them, between them, under them, among them, which is the atmosphere, which is the phase in which all the bodies dissolve and all the bodies break down in order to become potential gifts for other bodies, so that they can recreate themselves from these bodies. And what we see as the image of this process of exchange of bodies is this manifold, colored, elation causing, even fragrant. You don't see the fragrance here because it's just a video screen. Fragrant, inviting, sensuous reality, which is a phase. I would say it's a phase of the atmosphere. Or take this, that's a shot I just did 2 hours ago of a cherry tree which starts to blossom. And in a way, you could even say that, as someone suggested to me once, that you see the same thing in 2 different phases. You see the atmosphere in its more abstract phase as this blue of the scattered light by the little water droplets. And you see it in its more concrete, in its concrescent phase as the blossoms, as the bark, as the wood. And let me go a little bit more deeply into this. This is probably still a bit general and a bit abstract when I do this switch between the invisible and the visible. What I drew here is it's a very simplified version of something one could call the cycle of breath. And it is this cycle of breath is happening between animals and plants, obviously. So we are also animals, and we are fed by that which plants breathe out. We are fed by O2, the big O, in double form, by oxygen. We're breathing what plants give us, and we're breathing out what in turn plants eat. So we're breathing out CO2, and plants eat it. And this CO2 is part of our body. What we breathe out is part of our body, and our body then becomes the plant's body. So what actually happens is that we can only exist because we are bound in this circle of exchange of our bodies with other members, other individuals, other participants of life. And only because we exchange our bodies, we can have our bodies. And in the end, our bodies are not even anything really solid. They are a process of flow. They are just a sort of nod through which matter flows by this ongoing circular mutual gifting of breath. And I have another little video because that's also something very powerful. I'll let you watch this just a second before I go. There is something very powerful, and you can stand at the sea and suddenly realize that the sea is actually breathing. Like the rhythm of the waves is like the rhythm of the breath, and like the crest of the wave, the matter of each individual's body forms for a while and then transforms into other bodies, like waves crashing into one another. And in the end, every body is part of the sea. So no wonder the experience of the shore, the experience of the waves, of the play of the waves, has such a profound impact on our own experience, as it points out the way matter is shared, is distributed between all bodies. And again, it's this distribution, this sharing could not happen without this invisible face in which the gift is given. And we could also actually make the same argument for the water as such. We can also say that our bodies are actually integral parts of the watersheds, and the rivers run through us. Our bodies are parts of the rivers. And if you look at the forms of your blood vessels, you'll see that they form little rivulets and bigger streams and huge streams, because we drink the water from wells in the landscape, and then we give it back by sweating, by breathing, by peeing. It's going into the remainder of the water. So there again, we have this situation that we are somehow for a certain time desiring an independent shape, but at the same time only able to keep this shape because we share our realness with everyone else. And this is the scientific formulation of what I just said. And as I'm a biologist, I wanted to put in at least one formula. And but I mean, you don't lose anything if you don't follow what I did there. And I will just quickly explain it. It shows the citrate cycle, which is the main metabolic cycle in our body cells, and it actually shows this figure shows that the CO2 we breathe out in these pink circles, the CO2 which we breathe out is not the carbon. The carbon in the CO2 we breathe out is not the carbon which comes from the food. I left the German word there, Nahrung, food. So the food is broken down, and it goes into an intermediate chemical compound, and then this goes into the cycle, and this from this cycle there is carbon taken into the body, and there's also carbon from the body going into the cycle. And then there's carbon from the body, which is in the cycle, going into the breath and going out. And when I saw this for the first time, I was really somehow shocked that nobody had told me in school, because everybody used this metaphor that we are these little industrial complexes, and our bodies are actually combustion machines, and I'm filling the tank with rolls with ham or with a cup of coffee, and it's burned, and this gives me the energy, and then some exhaust is going off. But this is not biologically not true. It's very fascinating to see that biologically we give ourselves away. In order to exist, we give ourselves away. It's very intriguing that this is the basic way that how our bodies exist, by giving ourselves away and by being dependent on building ourselves up from other bodies. And again, you see, I love a little bit redundance to underscore the element of experiential involvement. So again, this exchange of gifts is this what we see here. This is breath as exchange of gifts. And the involvement, our own involvement in this, our own personal emotional involvement in viewing this, in being participant in this setting, in witnessing this, has to do something with the profound understanding of this giftedness, of the mutual giftedness of our bodies to one another. And I'm going to skip this. So we should not underestimate ourselves. That's a quote from Andenes, the Norwegian depth ecologist and Spinozist also, actually. We should not underestimate ourselves. So we should not make ourselves smaller than we truly are, because we are actually also an ecological self, and the ecological self is extended into the whole biosphere. So this is also ourself, and we should not cut ourselves off from this larger self, because then we will misunderstand everything. We will misunderstand ourselves, but we will also misunderstand reality. So we should admit that we know more, we can know more than we deem to know, than we think to know. And if we deeply look at the term atmosphere, there is actually breath already in it, because atmos, the Greek word for mist and vapor, has the same root as the old Indo-German word for, which then in Sanskrit became Atman, which means breath and also the self, the mind, the soul maybe. And in German, it's very easy, because German to breathe is Atmen. It's very obvious. Or Dutch Adem, I'm not sure if I pronounced it right, which is breath. And allow me for the last remaining 5 minutes, I hope I still have 5 minutes, to follow this, let's say, follow the Indian track, to gain a little bit more insight into actually the atmosphere as shared exchange of breath, which I would like to enlarge to reality as shared exchange of breath, or reality as commons of breath. Maybe that would be the right term. So we go to the Indian subcontinent, and I suggest to use a little bit playfully. I suggest to use a Buddhist model of reality, and to map on it the little lessons our different perspective on organisms, which I presented before, taught us. And the Buddhists, I need to go back because this is what I need for what I want to say here. In Buddhism, there is a term on the Buddhist path. Let's say on the Buddhist path, there is a term, the term pointing out reality, which is actually what the disciple strives to achieve. The disciple strives to understand reality as something profoundly shared, as not something consisting of objects, but something in which every being intimately participates, and only because of this participation reality can exist. And the word for what the teacher is giving to this disciple is the pointing out instruction. So my argument is, and that's what I want to try to do in the last slides, my argument is that actually any contact with the various forms the atmosphere appears to us, be it as blue sky or be it as a sea of blossoms, is a pointing out instruction about the nature of reality as breath. So that's a huge endeavor for the last minutes, but I try to do it quickly and playfully. So there are these three terms which characterize the nature of the mind. The Buddhists say the nature of the mind, which is in Rigpa in Tibetan. And on the left side, I have the Sanskrit terms and the Tibetan terms for these three aspects of the nature of the mind. And on the right side, I have the English translations, which are always a bit difficult, but I settle on these. So this reality, some of you will for sure know it, has the character of emptiness of ego. That's shunyata. That's somehow the most known, and many will say actually Buddhism is about emptiness, but that's a bit coarse, I would say. So emptiness of ego. It's not empty of anything, but it is empty of ego. And then there's the aspect of luminosity, lalita, or you could also say, it's already difficult to translate. You could say playfulness, the freshness, the sparklingness. Like when you remember this, the meadow with all these flowers, that's the luminosity of reality. And then there's karuna, which often is translated with compassion. And I would suggest to translate it with lovingness. And let us have a look at how these aspects of the nature of the mind break down when we map them on certain aspects of the organism as this crest of the wave of shared embodied existence. So what about shunyata? What about emptiness? An organism is empty because it has no fixed material substance. You see, that's a big blow to your ego, because even if you look in the mirror and you feel okay about how you look, it's everything you see is not yours, because you will breathe it out and it will go into the body of other beings. So an organism has no kernel. In metabolism, the world is passing through it, only temporarily enfolded in an individual form. The corn on the field will be my flesh, and my flesh will be breathed out and breathed in by a tree, be an acorn at the end of next summer. So an organism is that process or that experience which realizes the world in mutual transformation with others. So there's emptiness in being an organism, which is somehow shocking, but it's also hugely relieving. And that's maybe the blue sky is a very good example for this emptiness, because you can look up there and it's actually you. It is what you have been, and it is what you will become. And I think it's a nice little exercise to do this, to see that we are also there, or we are there, and we find ourselves there. And so the second is luminosity, lalita. And because an organism is always manifesting in new forms, it's always changing, it's always playing, it's always an experience. It's not just dull, it's meaningful. It's a hard problem, to speak with David Chalmers. It's about feeling. It's about being existentially involved. There's nothing which doesn't have a meaning. Everything is somehow sparkling with its own glittering freshness. And of course, the luminosity is what springs to our eyes, what springs to our senses, what enraptures us, and we don't understand why. We're not able to formulate it. We just immerse ourselves in it, and when we try to find an explanation in the dominating scientific paradigm, we are very helpless. And then there's karuna, lovingness, and that's the most profound aspect, the most profound idea. And it has to do with the observation that the organism is from some invisible center always brought forth in its own embodiment. The organism is gifted to itself. Like, like the experience, like when you cut yourself with a knife by preparing dinner, and after some days your wound has closed in the miraculous way. So your healing is somehow gifted to yourself, and there is a pull, a desire that there be life which manifests through organism, which is manifest as an action, which is a self-realization as happening and as experience, and which is what gives life to others. So my own realization as a breathing being, breathing in and breathing out, is also giving life to others. So that's the aspect of lovingness. And all this is part of the commons of breath and the atmosphere. So this is my token image for the lovingness. And as this is also always an experience. This is always an experience which is profoundly shared. Yeah, so I hope I could make some of my ideas clear in this quick run through the atmosphere as yourself, as myself, and as an inner process, as a process of mutual creation. And no, I leave this. And so I thank you a lot for your attention. You see, this is another version of your breath. This wonderful early summer butterfly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andreas. I invite the audience members to pose a question or a comment. Feel free to write it in the Q&A section. If you can just stop sharing the screen, Andreas.
Oh, true. Yes.
And I'll just ask you something first from your talk, which was very clear and very beautiful, related to the words that you opened up for us and that you brought into blossoming. Within the idea of us as atmosphere, I was reminded that the word conspire etymologically means literally to breathe together. So this is very curious, and it just made me think, listening to you, is us as atmosphere, is that a given biological fact? which seems that it is, as you were showing with the rhythm of the waves are the rhythm of breathing and so many other examples? Or does it necessitate us to conspire in some sense, politically or metabolically? I'm not sure. Conspire in order to achieve this unity.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, you gave me another word which I can use. Thank you so much. I remember because I didn't find it myself, when a colleague pointed me out to the fact that psyche doesn't only mean breath and only mean butterfly and soul, but also breath. I didn't know it, so he told me, and then I was, my whole universe opened up. Yeah, that's a very good question, because it also touches on, it actually touches on the question. If there can be something as the right behavior, which, if there can be something like the right behavior, which nonetheless is non-deterministic. And let me see how I can put it. I would say the role of human beings is to actively, consciously implement through their culture what they understand the fecund, the fertile reality needs to receive. So we are not, as we know, we are free to decide, and at the moment, some some very powerful beings decide that they do not want to breathe together, and humans are free to decide, but their role, for most of the time humans have existed on Earth, has been to actively participate in the mutual gift giving which brings forth life. So humans actually need to conspire. The blue butterfly, which was a brown butterfly, and the cow parsley, they just do it. And it is probably a profound meditative experience to be a blue butterfly, and they don't need to be told, they don't need to conspire, they just do it. Or you can say on the level of the desires of their bodies, they do it anyway. And also we do it anyway on the level of our bodies, but we can counteract it. And so we need a decision to do it. And that was I would say, in all traditional societies and indigenous societies, humans conceive of themselves as those who have to protect life. And by conspiring to breathe their body into the bodies of others. And we don't do it. Our civilization doesn't do it.
Yes, nicely said. It seems now, listening to you and showing us that pedagogical little drawing, it seems to me that there's a lot that we actually do have to learn. It's not instinctual. Even the invitation in the beginning, when you said, get into your feeling of late bloom, I had to force myself because it's not instinctual, but it seems so crucial that, and just the idea that it's possible to get into to summon that feeling. So it seems that it's something that we have to learn.
Yeah. We have to, I would say we have to remember. And I think the problem is, when you say you had to force yourself, you really had to search. I hope you could find a little bit of it. You probably also were surprised in this setting, because we're in a scientific setting where you're not supposed to work with this dimension. And I'm always doing it. So I'm somehow going against the rules, because nobody is expecting this. But I'm actually, my argument is that we have a faculty of knowledge, which is very potent, and we don't use it because we have been told that we cannot use it, we must not use it, it's forbidden, and certain mystical traditions would call it the heart. The heart is we know this through the heart, and we know when we see this butterfly, our heart is touched, and then we have a certain knowledge, and the problem only is that everyone who is introduced into this culture has to unlearn this knowledge. So it's you could, and I've done this in some writing. This is also a process of colonization. Our heart is colonized by heartlessness, and so we can unlearn this. I don't think. I mean, what we have to learn, and that's somehow the enigma about humans. What we have to learn is to create a culture which institutionalizes this, or which plays with this with our life-giving potential. But the feeling that it is right to do so is something which we are capable of. I would really say it's more a question of remembering than a question of discovering new terrains. And there comes something to my mind. It's interesting. I mean, it's typically not a. I have to look. It's not a biologist who said it, but it's a politologist who was a pioneer in human rights, Abdulaziz Said. And he said the ecological function of the human being is love. And love, what is love? What love is actually the active decision to allow for life of others. That's love. So that's the ecological function. And many traditional societies know this. So they know they are actually responsible to keep the ecological balance through their actions, through their ways they take lives, through rituals, through increase. And because we are forced to do it actively, but we also can do it actively. We can decide. We can take the decision. Love as the act of giving life is something that you can decide to do. You can say, I'm going to act in a loving way. So I will actually protect these beings because they need to be here. And that's something a culture can develop. And if you look at our culture and the hidden paradigms which govern it, then it's just the contrary of it. It's just the contrary of breathing life into other beings. It's taking life from other beings. And you even learn it by self-help books, how to better be competitive and take the breath from others. So it's the contrary of what we're doing, but it can be done. I think this is actually the huge cultural endeavor to recreate a culture which enjoys to give life.
I hear you. Thank you. We have few questions. Maria Walsh, a couple of provocative questions, and I'll connect it with the second one from Kate Farrington because it relates to it. I'm not sure if you can see it yourself, Andreas, but I'll read them in any case. What about?
I can see it.
I'll just read it just so that everyone can hear it too, because I'm not sure if everyone can see it. What about the shared exchange of breath between toxic environmental entities implied by the flight paths of the first image? How can that be addressed by this mode? Humans and plants also breathe in and out toxicities. And then the second question from Kate is, what effect does the introduction of toxicity in the atmosphere from industrialization have on the capacity for great compassion, where mutual gifts may not necessarily cause no harm?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, very important. Very important. Yeah, so and thank you for calling this my model. It's nice. It gives a sort of scientific touch to it. Yeah, so it's important to see that actually the circle of the gift will always happen because this is how reality is organized. But you can do it in a toxic way, and you use the word toxic. And everybody knows the second meaning, which has gained the word toxic in terms of ruining relationships. So it is absolutely possible that you free ride on this circle of the gift, and instead of giving, you're taking. But it's still somehow wrapped into the circle of the gift, which means that others who are implied in the circle of the gift will still consider it as a circle of the gift, and they will die. That's actually what is happening. You know, humans. I don't want to use. Well, how can I say it? Participants in the dominant culture. They're free riding on the circle of the gift. You know, when you always take and never give back, and then you're abusing it, and you're creating toxic relationships. This is happening, of course, and but it doesn't mean that the circle of breath is not a valid description. You know, when it can be abused, it rather points to the fact that we need to understand the nature of reality in order to contribute to it in a productive way. And you know, it is actually, let me come back to this again. Dejan, you started with this. It's some important aspect of the status of our of human accountability and of the human role in terms of freedom, actually. So normally there are these two competing absolutistic polar opposites, that either humans are completely free, and then it is also free what they think about reality, because in the end they are always constructing and creating something, and on some sort of mute background. And the other model is actually everything is deterministic, and we're somehow biological machines, and our creations are sort of epiphenomena on some deterministic, inevitable process. And I'm actually suggesting something in the middle. I'm suggesting that, of course, there is an unfolding of reality going on, which we are part of and which we do not control. And the unfolding is the unfolding of life over time and the desire for life over time. And we have the choice if we want to participate in this or we don't want to participate in this. And we are given our existence. So it would be somehow morally logical to give back to this reality which gives us our existence. So Robin Wall Kimmerer, the botanist and indigenous writer and wonderful philosopher, she has a nicer way to put it. She says, if you sustain those who sustain you, the world will go on forever. So it is actually, we do have a choice, but not because everything is arbitrary and we can choose anything. Just this is not the case. The world is not arbitrary. So we can actually be blinded and choose what is not true. And then that's what our civilization is doing. And this will mean that we will vanish from the picture.
Indeed. I'll just summarize quickly a third question so that we can go on, which basically asks, have we lost this ability to respond to the questions you are now asking because we have lost the language to do so? Namely, do we need a new language to enter this paradigm?
No, I don't think so. I'm always wary of new languages, and you know, and traditional cultures have traditional languages, and they still are in this paradigm. And I mean, if we look at these languages, then we might learn something. But you know, we go back to ancient Greek. This is not a new language, and we know that they understand actually the butterfly as breathing soul, and we know everything. So actually, no, I don't think so. We just have to map our language to what is there in a better way.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Andreas. We will move on now to Nephi. If you can, Nephi, please, you can join with your video. Thank you. Thank you, Andreas. There's a further comment. You can see a couple of more comments
Yes,
there.
thank you so much. And thanks everyone for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Nephi. Welcome. Embedded in the White Mountains of Arizona, I assume. I'll give you the screen now. Go ahead.
That was an awesome presentation. Thank you for that. I felt numerous parts of that. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nephi Craig. I'm coming to you from the White Mountain Apache tribe in northeastern Arizona. It is a very windy afternoon here, and I have a message to share relating to this topic and many others. The title for my presentation that I put together for us today is Trauma, Violence, and Internalized Supremacy. I will just kind of read my description. So description is: indigenous paradigms view colonialism as a shapeshifter or a monster with a violent appetite for life. Colonization rages blindly to remain in power while devouring our world. This session presents colonization as the act of violence and colonialism as the behavioral health pandemic that ensues. Indigenous perspectives, values, and intergenerational vitality offer remedy and place-based renewal. I'm presenting this presentation to not as an artistic provocation. I'm presenting this information as a singular paradigm within a larger indigenous reality. I am very fortunate to be able to communicate in the oppressor's language, which is English. I am unfortunate that I cannot communicate this in my indigenous language, Apache or Navajo. And that has been a wound all my life. This message is really a dispatch from the underground. It's a dispatch of a subculture, of a subculture, of a subculture, of a subculture, of another subculture. If you are not a member of the BIPOC community worldwide, Black, Indigenous, people of color, you might not completely relate to what I'm going to say. And again, this is not to be provocative. This is a climatological imperative, because climate change and the detriments associated with globalization and the pandemic of colonization and the disease of colonialism is worldwide. The perspectives that I offer and the terms that I choose to use, they are framed by many disciplines. I do not consider myself an expert. I consider myself a student of this experience. I've been fortunate to learn many things in my journey. Much of my perspective is framed by being a cook professionally. But as an Indigenous person, doing much travel and study and interaction with not only my own people on the White Mountain Apache tribe and the Navajo Nation, but also tribes from the California coast up into the Northwest coast, into the Great Plains, into the Dakotas, into the East Coast and the West Coast, down into Mexico and up into Canada. We all experience trauma as a barrier, and not just trauma in our contemporary lives. Trauma is a intergenerational barrier that impacts everything from fundamental artistic expression to access to education, access to care, access to awareness of this webinar, that is a climatological imperative. Trauma is a barrier in many ways that when it enters our life, it weaves itself into the fabric of our genetics and disintegrates some of those strands. And this is a message that is framed by my years of practice as a professional cook. It is framed by my perspective as a father of 3 Indigenous young people that I'm very proud of and I love very much. And it's also an amplification of an angst that is intergenerational. The amplification of an angst and desire to amplify the indigenous message of vitality, strength, humility, and power. And not power as you might experience it or understand it, but power is the lack of power. Power is the internalization that we are powerless, therefore making us powerful, that we are humble contributors to this reality. Like Andreas said, be in the atmosphere. So my perspective is that of a practitioner and a student. I am 44 years old, and I've been fortunate to travel around the world cooking. My paradigm for this message is shaped and framed by being a dad, by being a cook, by being a clinician, by being a resurgent, by being an indigenous resurgent, by being a skateboarder, a lifelong skateboarder, by a punk rocker and a hip hop head. I've always identified with the voices of the underground because I did not know that I was from the underground. My perspective is framed and is also informed by the language of social work, behavioral health, mental health, indigeneity, survivance, because I feel for many years of my life, I was living in survival mode. Through addiction and recovery, I've been fortunate to transcend survival mode into evolve into survivance, which I feel is creatively utilizing those traumatic experiences, my street smarts, my creativity, my resiliency for a better life. My paradigm and my message and the language I speak is framed by therapy culture because I'm now a clinician. My paradigm and my message is framed by being a chef of many years, and definitely a person in sobriety. Recovery is a huge component in my life. I've been clean and sober for the past 12 and a half years. It'll be 13 years this year. So as Indigenous people and as one Indigenous person expressing my voice and my perspective and a message that this phenomenon of colonialism is worldwide. As Indigenous peoples, we've seen the world end once, and myself and my children are survivors of that apocalypse. And our paradigm, our perspective on worldview of being interconnected and having humility as our power is one that we love to share, but we often are not given the opportunity. So with that, I'm very happy to be able to share here today. As an example, as an Indigenous person, we know and recognize that if you are not a member, if you're not an Indigenous person or not a member of the BIPOC community, you do not have to learn anything about us. You do not have to learn anything about me as an Apache person. You do not have to learn anything about my culture and my language, and that's a luxury. You don't have to learn anything about my language, our experience with trauma, our interactions, our post-colonial encounters with colonialism, and that's a privilege and it's a luxury. We know that you don't have to learn about our true history as Indigenous peoples in the United States and worldwide. And those are luxuries, those are privileges. Yet from our perspective, in order to survive, in order to just break through the bare minimum standard of living that is not in poverty, we have to learn everything about your language. We have to learn about your culture. I am speaking in the language of the oppressor. We have to learn the structures. We have to learn from your institutions. We have to put away deep pieces of our identity in order to thrive in dominant society, not just in the United States, although it is very much a red alert state for oppression of Indigenous peoples today. And those are forms of trauma. not just in the United States, but every single indigenous pocket of resurgence and resilience, every indigenous community around the world, every community that has a core ailment of poverty and oppression and marginalization. So I'm challenging your perspective in what you know and what you think you know. The perspective of how, as a person of color, internalized supremacy being the concept of this presentation I'm offering it's similar to the concept of internalized oppression. And I want to just kind of share what that means. Internalized oppression is a psychological phenomenon where members of an oppressed group come to believe and accept the negative stereotypes and prejudices that dominant groups hold above them. And this internalized state is where we begin to believe the language and the violence of our oppressors, where we begin to act them out. And in my case, now years later, with the clarity of recovery and sobriety, I know that my own addiction that began in my youth is not a hereditary genealogical defect of any kind. We're not genetically predisposed to addiction, alcoholism, incarceration. It's just that therapy culture, dominant society, institutions, and the power structures dismiss the legacy of historical trauma that we have inherited, that we did not create, that we have inherited. And so as a kid, I realize now, looking back, that the manifestation of white supremacy, racism, injustice, colonization, globalization, and all of these negative branches of the colonial monster materialized in my life as incarceration, addiction, and near-death experiences. So I offer a message that this phenomenon I'm referring to as internalized supremacy, here's a definition of internalized or of white supremacy. It's the belief that the white race is superior to all other races and should dominate society. And it's a political, economic, cultural system that maintains dominance and privilege of white people over other racial groups. And even as I speak this right now, I feel danger in my heart. I feel it in my veins. I feel it in my mind. My pressure level is going up. The cortisol is being released because I know talking about these concepts is dangerous because of the world that I exist in. I exist in your world. So the concept of internalized oppression, what does that mean if we're talking about internalized supremacy? That means that we begin not only just non-native people. So if we've internalized oppression, we believe the messages we receive, and then we buy into it and promote those themes, we're contributing, we're complacent, we're accomplice to this state of violence that's ravaging our world. Like I said, from the indigenous perspective, everything is alive, everything has a life. The words that I'm choosing to speak, they are floating around in the universe, and they're waiting for me to draw them down and communicate. And like I said, I'm not communicating this to be provocative artistically in any sense. This is a dispatch. It's not a desperate cry for help. It's a responsible presentation that colonialism has brought on this climatological imperative we're talking about today, and challenging our paradigms to disengage and consider how can we live in a world where we are in recovery ourselves, recovery from internalized oppression, recovery from internalized supremacy, to live in a better world. The dominance and how the Americas was built on indigenous landscapes is the supreme example of how colonization is a monster in our grandparents' generation and our great-great-grandparents' generation. And yet we still continue to internalize the themes of the power structures that we benefit from, and to not really give breath and life to a healthier reality. And these concepts begin in our homes. They begin in our own individual lives. To use really big words like climatological imperative is it's wonderful and amazing, but what does that mean in your everyday life? I challenge us as practitioners, professionals, artists, parents, and once upon a time, little kids, to examine how we are being complacent to the monster of colonialism. It is a machine that is ravaging to devour. It is the machine that has been on the necks of indigenous peoples for centuries. And as we move forward into an uncertain future with a very delicate food system, a very delicate power structure, at least in the United States, we feel the tension socially, economically, epidemiologically, in all different ways of how this population change is occurring. The power structures are merging. And so, for example, in the American Southwest, the United States Census predicts that by the year 2050, the majority is going to be Black, brown, indigenous people of color. It's no longer going to be a white majority. And by 2050 and beyond, most of the United States of America will be brown, like me. And so the change is coming. And I hope that we can consider a message of individual, familial, psychological wellness, so we can pull back and disengage from colonial violence that we know and feel in our hearts when we encounter it. And I challenge us as artists, practitioners, parents, and professionals to investigate the true histories of the landscapes where you live. Because like this description said, indigenous perspective values intergenerational vitality, offer remedy and place-based renewal. It's not going to be a automatic utopian fix. It's going to be intergenerational. The wounds that we live with today are intergenerational, and the remedies are going to be intergenerational. But we do have the ability to be cycle breakers in our families. And that is what matters the most. That until this day, you had no idea who I was or where I'm coming from or the message, the translated message of the indigenous experience. And after this, you may not think of me ever again, and that's a privilege. But what I hope you do think about is this climatological imperative and how we have the opportunity to shape our world at home. Because I'm coming to you from my own house. There are objects on these shelves behind me that represent beautiful moments in my life. Your home, my home, is your own space of heaven, piece of heaven, the reality you create. And that's where impact matters the most. So I encourage you to examine power structures around you, to challenge the perceptions and paradigms that dominate our practice. Every single construct in the artistic world, the therapeutic world, the political world, the literary world, the legal world are all framed, created by, and they're colonial constructs. And with that, those colonial constructs comes those themes of internalized supremacy, that a legal system that is colonial in nature is much better than indigenous justice, that is much better and more effective than indigenous justice is. And even the medical field is catching up to indigenous worldview and practice. The concept of interconnectedness is something that we've known and we still talk about every single day. The humanity as breath or atmosphere is just as important and valid as something like my eagle feathers here, that are given to me and hold power only because I believe that they do. So in this description, when the IDSVA asked me to present, I kind of had an anxiety attack, like, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? How do I reach a professional audience with this message? I'm afraid it's dangerous to speak. Who's going to think what? Am I going to hurt some feelings? and that's just how I am, because I do my best to be a responsible presenter and professional. My life has really changed, and the message that I'm attempting to translate and offer to you is one of accountability and responsibility. There are numerous Indigenous professionals that write about Indigenous resurgence, decolonization, mental health, wellness, many great authors and professionals out there. And so I'm not the one sole voice. My perspective does not represent my entire White Mountain Apache tribe or the Navajo Nation. But as I mentioned in the beginning, my perspective and the message I offer is framed and informed by interacting with food. I arrived at these messages and themes by surviving white supremacy. I arrived at the opportunity to create this message and the work that we do now by surviving oppression, by learning how to navigate paradigms and epistemologies to be able to exist in your world. And that has been very, very hard. It has almost killed me. It almost killed me 13 years ago. And so I live a life in second sight, and I offer an intimate message that possibly the highest art form is the art of being human. It's the art of self-determination. How we interact in the world and how we shape and mold our spirits is a profound poetic, it's poetry in motion. It's the art form of our life. What sculpture are we going to leave in the minds of other people that we were? How do we create an impact and leave a legacy that reweaves and heals those genetic strands of trauma and grief in our lives? It's by disengaging from colonial violence. It's by feeding our families better food. It's by responsible purchasing and understanding our purchasing power as consumers. It's by amplifying Indigenous voices, Black clinical psychologists, Indigenous psychologists, social work, giving life and resources to education, mental health, behavioral health, and themes to help heal as opposed to be punitive. Because the power structure is like I mentioned in the beginning, it's a monster with a violent appetite for life, and it is fighting to survive. It's ravaging and tearing through our reality. It's breaking our hearts. It's causing divorces. It's contributing to the preventable food-related diseases. It's contributing to the pandemic. It's contributing to every single element of global warming in our lives. So I offer a very kind but diligent solution or remedy, and that's one of taking care of yourself. So you can be the resource that we need. If you attended and logged on to this webinar, there was a part of you that is drawn towards vitality, creativity, and understanding this blurry, sometimes often dismal and grim reality that we call life on Earth. And to be able to offer some clarity, because clarity through a lens of interaction. I'm not telling you how to live. I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm doing the best to translate the broken heart that I live with on a daily basis into terms that offer inspiration, that can hopefully leave a mark and can challenge you to engage in this quote unquote highest art form of being human, because that's what it is. And fortunately, if colonial violence, oppression, racism, white supremacy are learned behaviors, then that means we can unlearn them. And a brighter path towards remedying some of these themes of social change and damage requires us that we live what we're talking. I learned this the hard way through sobriety. is that if I am not living what I'm talking about, then I am empty. So being able to examine our reality and see how we have been engaging in colonial violence and investigating how we can impact our world. It's kind of like that concept of thinking internationally, but acting locally. And maybe that could be said that we are thinking externally, but acting internally, because whatever we think and whatever we believe and how we construct our spirit is going to show up on the outside. And so I offer trauma, violence, and internalized supremacy as a reality, not as a theory. I offer it as an ethno-poetic interpretation of my existence, of a survivor and one that's able to thrive now. And when I say ethno-poetic, I mean that it does not need to be categorized, that it just needs to be experienced. I've been struggling for many, many, many years to understand what category my work fits in as a chef. I'm an addiction substance abuse counselor. I'm an advanced certified relapse prevention specialist. I'm a behavioral health technician, and I'm an executive chef with 26 years experience. I'm also an indigenous resurgent and a father. And my work does not fit in any one of those fields. I'm against the grain by nature, not for the sake of being antagonistic, but just that forging my own path has brought me to you today. And I'm very grateful for that. So I'm sharing this message and this theme and encouraging you to take care of yourself as we continue to investigate these deep and meaningful questions that will impact generations to come. And from my life on the White Mountain Apache tribe, and growing up on both the White Mountain Apache tribe and the Navajo Nation, when I speak, I see the smiles of my relatives. I see the poverty in my neighborhoods, and every day on a daily basis, I work with and encounter White Mountain Apache people and other Native American people that I know from experience are suffering the manifestations of intergenerational grief and the shapeshifter that is colonialism. So in conclusion, I ask us to think if colonization is the act of violence and colonialism is the disease that sets in across generations like an epidemic and a pandemic, then what is the symptomology of colonialism? It's internalized supremacy, internalized oppression, violence. A recovery mentor said to me once, when language fails, violence becomes the language. And if that is the case, then this climatological imperative we're discussing is fueled by lack of language. It's not that it doesn't exist, it's that we have turned our back on it. And so the messages are all there and ready for us to use. They're just very terrifying. It's scary to change your life. It's scary to walk into the unknown and know that there is life after divorce, that there is life after the death of a loved one, that there is life after incarceration. But the fight to transcend survival mode into survivance is where we are on a global scale. And to me, that is poetry in motion. That is what makes this life beautiful and worth fighting for. So I want to thank you for inviting me and listening to me speak. Again, I'm not an authority. I'm a practitioner. I'm in the trenches, on the ground, on the res, and I'm a proud, happy parent, a man in recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nephi, very much. We'll just have some questions here before we jump into Piripi, who I'm happy to see as well. It managed to find the connection. Really fantastic engagement, Nephi. I have to say, against the grain is where the health lies. So we invited you because you are against the grain. I appreciate very much your subculture within subculture within subculture, minor within the minor. And that too is where the main juice lies and the vitality lies. So we are privileged to hear you on this. I'll read a couple of questions and then I'll let Andreas also say something if he has. So we have some questions. This is from Nandita. Thank you for a powerful presentation, riveting. The question is to connect with Andreas's idea of breath. How do we breathe with difficult others? Draw in, conspire, inspire. How is it possible? For those of us in the US, it connects to everyday encounters. So the question is, how do we, I guess, communicate and breathe together with those that would disagree?
Yeah, I get asked that question in many forms all the time, and it always come back to intelligent coexistence. I think when we speak to the mind, we reach the mind. When we speak to the person, we reach to the person. But when we speak to the heart, we reach the heart. Kind of a simple mantra. Having a sense of humility and trying to meet people where they are. This discussion, and my presentation, some people may not be ready for it, and that's okay. We are all on a different journey and encountering different themes in our process towards health and wellness. So that's one of the best ways I can answer without taking too long.
Thank you. And so the following question, it relates to that just on a more technical level. Within the role of therapist counselor, how do you resist the power riddle structures language of behavioral health? For instance, the categorization, diagnosis of mental illness and the related problems of stigma, etc. So the language that you mentioned.
I really appreciate that question because that was a realization of mine early on. I almost, it was so powerful and striking to me that I almost quit as a clinician because I realized that I'm doing the business of the state. I'm doing the business of the colonizer, that Western constructs and therapy culture are more damaging to indigenous values than beneficial. So walking a fine line of indigeneity and clinical culture has been the struggle. Fortunately for me and my work, the food, the hands-on nature, and the behavioral health components of being a part of a team in a kitchen or a cafe that we operate as a vocational center, or offering agricultural farm visits, or being able to go out into the field to harvest traditional wild Apache foods, offers a language that is inherent that we can't teach, and we call that behavioral activation of indigeneity. So maybe not to make it indigenous specific, it's behavioral activation is the language we need to focus on.
That's excellent. I just want to add to that. You mentioned that the remedy and overcoming is intergenerational because the trauma is intergenerational, which means that you're forced to have this enormous or overwhelming view of some remedies in the future, which seems to me enormous. But you're also dealing with remedies day to day, I guess, with just sheer nourishment and being precise with the nourishment of food and stuff like that. Am I correct?
Yeah, and I feel like that's the beauty of working with food. And when I offered, when I challenged and offered tools and perceptions to enhance and hopefully someday answer some of these questions we're talking about today, please include food. Please include what we choose to feed our families and the stories and histories attached to those foods, because these points and all these things that I've been presenting that shape my perspective, I followed the food and I survived all of this to be able to communicate like this. So the food has been my biggest teacher. So I offer that to you as another tool.
Excellent. I'll let the panelists give a comment if they have any. And
yeah, maybe just a wholehearted agreement with Nephi. Thank you so much for your moving account. really, really thanks from my heart. And when you said when we speak from the heart and to the heart, then we meet the heart. So actually, that would also be. I mean, let's say it's for me. It is so convincing, and I love it that you take on this heart dimension, because I think this is just what is missing. If you ask me what is wrong with this world, I would say it is heartless. It is heartless. And if we go into our heart, then we cannot be but true and nourishing life. And if others don't do this, we can still be true and nourishing life. And I think and be true means also to see our own ego protective mechanisms and not fall for them. So it's a lot of exercise, but to me, the heart is the key, actually, the power of the heart. So thank you for that. And really thank you for your presentation so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Excellent. So I will move on to Piripi now, our final speaker. And if you all have energy to stay a little bit afterwards as well for another short session of discussions, that would be fantastic, Andreas and Nephi, and then we'll invite a few others. So thanks, Nephi. Piripi, good to see you. You probably didn't see Andreas's first image when he was presenting, but it was a sky with the long white cloud. Which is, I think, the place where you are coming to us right now. So I invite you to take over the screen. If you need me to share the documents that you send me, I can do that as well. Just let me know. Please unmute yourself and you're good to go. Just unmute yourself, Piripi. Unmute. Unmute yourself. Oh, perfect.
Thank you, Andreas, for the long white cloud. And immediately I'm thinking, as long as it's not the wrong white crowd. Yeah, sorry, I just, tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings to you all. So, I'm just going to start off with a karakia, which is a prayer and incantation. And I want to share a whole bunch of things, but I also want to say that it's absolutely a pleasure to be here and serendipitous as well. You wouldn't believe, I'm just going to share the document here, what it's taken to get here. Seriously. So I'm going to talk about whatungaro te tangata toi tui te whenua, people, past, and the land remains. And I'm also going to talk about koha, which is gifting. So this prayer is an incantation of ascending and connecting heaven and earth, our environments. I'm sure I'll call the gentleman I'm so pleased to be speaking with Nephi and Andreas, hey brothers, Jedi Knights. So, and then I'll talk about gifting. So here's the prayer. So there's been a whole lot of serendipities, blocks, numerous blocks right up to this minute. I mean, the whole system that I had fell down, and I had to say to the brother Dejan, oh man, I hope I can make, but here we are. So here's the karakia. Tēnei au, te hokai nuku te hokai rangi. Te hokai nā taku tūpuna tāne nui a rangi, piki te ai te rangi tūhaha ki te tihi o manu. I roko i nā tūrako i o matua kore anake. I riro anga ke tō te wānanga, ko te ke te tūau, ni ko te ke te tūa, ko te ke te aroni, tiri ai paupau wai kia papatūni ku kāputu ko tira tangata ki te whai au i te o māranga, tihei mauri ora. So now we've got the connectivity to above and below, metaphysical and physical. So with Pepeha, we identify ourselves with the connections to the land, So here's one. Ko tainui te waka, ko kariwa i te mana, ko whaingaro te moana, ko hōtiro te tangata. Tainui āwhironga nguru te ao, nguru te po. Roaring by day, roaring by night. that's looking out for my brother's house. And he's listening, kia ora, my bro. We're roaming again, brother, we're roaming again. So the next thing to do when we connect to the land from the heavens is to connect through our ancestry. So there's two canoes here, Tainui Waka, on the west coast of the North Island of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and on the east coast, Horauta Waka. So I'll go with the male line first. Ko hotu roho, hotu ope, hotu matapu, mō tai, ue raka kakati. Ka nā kakati ko tāwhau nā tāwhau ko tūrunga. Then I'll go to the female line. Horauta wako poraurangi, ue roa, tokera wahine, kahu ngonga mai wahine, kahu kura nui, tū purupuru, rā kei he kuro, tū purupuru, tuaka a mahina ārangi. Rau kawa rere ahu māngi a poto. There's a traffic jam there. You won't need to know all those details, and here I am. So tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. These are words from my grandfather. Ko tā koutou mō kai tēnei, e mihi atu ana kia koutou. I'm humble to be here and to serve you. Our name Waretini means to be a servant of many. It's my grandfather. When he taught me to be an orator on our speaking marae, in front of our longhouses, our meeting houses, he always said to me, "You must be the words that you open every oration with. I'm here to serve you all." So tēnā koutou kāteka. So after that, we go to our wharenui, our meeting houses. And you saw Mum's side and Dad's side that I came down on those lines. So which side do we do? If you look at the meeting house, on the left-hand side, that's Dad's. On the right-hand side, that's Mum's. And at the top, that's our ancestor, who's a chief, and I just took you to the chief, and before that was right up the top to the actual creator of all things. And then it comes down to the person sitting here right in front of you. So when we look at the inside of the meeting house, the inside there that's the female. That's where we sleep, that's where we're safe, and it's a world of darkness in terms of the spiritual metaphysical realms that women can connect to. And outside here on the speakers platform where I am now, that's the area of the men. So there's that balance that goes right there. And the balance I'm talking about is the balance between heaven and earth, which is our template for the balance of the male element up top there, and then the female element down below here. That's our meeting house. And on the left there, you can see that column, that's the male. On the right here, female, and here's the ancestor up there. On the inside of the meeting house, when you look in there, there's a female at the front, the male's at the back, for a good reason, and that's the interior here. This tells all of our stories from all of our ancestors, and up here and how to conduct our lives. And as you go up on the meeting house, that'll tell you about how to lead your spiritual template. To see that as we look up at the cosmos and the environment and our relationship, and then how we ground her with our mother. And the cool thing is knowing that your mothers, your fathers have all slept in this house. So that there is called an umbilical cord. When we see that pattern inside the meeting house, it connects us to the land. It's the same name that we have, whenua, for afterbirth. All of my grandchildren's afterbirths are in the land of my brother, in that land that we look down on that water and at that mountain. So the ukai po is to be breakfast at night in that whare, in that house. So it's like the land that suckled me as a baby. It sustains me now because I'm connected to the land as an adult, to hold, kai, to eat or imbibe, and in the night. It's a metaphor for Mother Earth as Papa Tuanuku, as the mother of all algorithms. So, whatu kuruai o te pō o te ao. So it ties together an environment. And I come back to that kōrero, that opening statement of my talk. Whatu ngaro te tangata, poi tū te whenua. The faces of people lost. And that's a cycle, but the land remains. People pass, but the land remains. So she's watching us. She likes to be clothed with all our forests and all our lakes, but she doesn't like to be naked, she doesn't like to be burnt, and she does not want to be drowned. So the matapi, the eyes that peer out of that wharenui. We've got one of my students, she's a fierce grandmother, man, fierce. And she's looking to reconnect because there was a disconnection at the generational cost. At 1840, when we had our treaty with the white people who came here, the Pākehā, 100% of our people spoke the language. 97% of the nation spoke the language, which meant that, you know, they had to engage economically with us. So they had to learn the language. Now only 1% of my people can speak. And so the country can speak, and 3% of my people can speak our own language, live and die without speaking our own language. So this fierce student, he says, yeah, but are the eyes looking out or are they looking in? So we look at the atua, which goes to the creator above, however you see that, to our ancestors at the top of the house, to the person standing and speaking on behalf of the tribe, and then to the children's 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 children. So if we look at the mother, and I want to really focus on Mother Earth, ko te wahine te whare o te ora, women are the houses of life. Ko te wahine te whare o te mate, women are the houses of death. Ko te wahine te whare tangata, women are the houses of humanity. They give life, they birth. Te kōpū o te whenua, they're the womb and the land. They're the waitapu puna waikoro pupu, the sacred pool of life, it's effervescent. Right? Maia papatu anu from Mother Earth. Te kōpū o te whenua, from within the womb, from within the womb. Te wai o te tapu, it's sacred. And there's that design that I showed you where we're connected from an umbilical cord to the land that we come from. We are the land is us, right? So it goes from the creator, comes down to the ancestors on top of your house, your meeting house, comes down to the person who's in front, and then to the children's children's children as a legacy. Yeah, the queer. Well, what's that one right on top? And as I said, the upoko aruki, the metaphysical head of creation, comes straight down to the metaphysical head on top of the meeting house, which is our ancestors, and then it comes down to baskets of knowledge that were passed on. That prayer that I gave you was about the spiritual, mental, physical, and personal connection to the land and to the people, beyond darkness, into the light of awareness, and then into growth and development, and then on to humility. Kaore he pō ki tuatu te pō o te kuare. There's no darkness darker than that of ignorance. Ignorance is a dark room because you don't even know what you're missing. That's our granddaughter, one of our granddaughters, beautiful moko. So you stand in the light and growth, then humility, and that's that figure at the top. And you go through the legacies from top in the heavens that ground us here. And you have our kaumātua, the speakers on the platform that stand and they take that arm and it drops down to where they are on each side of the house, male, female, and it takes it up. So they become the conduit to the heavens. They're the physical manifestation of what's going on and what's passed through time, the annals of time. When we open our house, when do we do it? Well, we do it in dark and we do it in light. So we start early in the morning so you can get together the night and the day, the manatana, the tane, the manawahine. You get the two elements of our male and female counterparts. Yeah. And there it is. So, well, what's the difference between who gets to speak on your behalf? Are they just adults or are they just adolescents? Are they middle-aged adolescents? And then we look for our Jedi Knights with the ability and the knowledge. And I'll come back to that. Why not both sides, he says. Who do I deem to be these with these Jedi Knights? They have mana-enhancing decision. That means whoever you think is your leader, that's your leader. It's not just by noise. People hear your words, but they follow who you are. When you get a branch, you rub all the rubbish out and you lift them with the hardwood, And I just say, if I wanted some bananas, I could have gone down the shop, but I'd rather make a marduk, I'd rather Nephi, and I'd rather harvest the fruit. So when I go into battle, that requires due diligence to be at my best. I don't want to be goofy, so I don't want to have Goofy standing next to me. Kariri taia, hakata maire, chief strike falls dither. And Paya, she says, well, is it age specific? Well, it's the difference between ordinary, noa, and extraordinary tapu. Te pai pai tapu. What's the difference? What's the difference? As you go up with that prayer, so you ascend, you transcend. So that incantation, it helps to transcend from ordinary to extraordinary, making a difference. So when we welcome people to our land, our air, our water, we have settlers' rights. We say, this is how it rolls. So we are the people of the land. So yeah, we set the policy and procedure. Our health and safety is tapu. They're the value systems of why we do things. As we see the celestial template, the ancestral template, and then we have our terrestrial template on what we do. So it modifies our behavior without being a modifier. It's a spiritual modifier. And once you're compliant and you become like us and we're the same, well, we can happily coexist. So, Jedi Knights, whakamahi te pāka, use the force. So, Andreas, kia ora, brother, the atmosphere is breath. The Earth's atmosphere is mostly understood, as you say, it's meant to be a reservoir of nothing, dead matter, okay, and not alive. So, getting that balance is right. The heavens, the earth, but the atmosphere is not lifeless. I love that in you, brother. Thank you so much. It is rather our sense of a shared God, collective breath, the phasal breath, and it establishes this full reciprocity between all individual living subjects. You look up to the sky, we understand ourselves. We look down at Papa Tunukurai. And the only difference is the individuals, the dividers, that divide heaven and earth. But why aren't we joined? So in each we breathe into one another. So we look at that knowledge again, and in our prayer we sow everything. Karoma te pō, karoma te ao. Tui, 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 tui a. Hei, mauri ora. Little feet. So that tihe, euphemistically they say to the white guys, it's a sneeze, but you can call it a sneeze of life. But in about 9 months' time, you might have some little feet running along. Take care of that. Nephi, my brother, former violence, internalized supremacy, indigenous paradigms, colonizers, shapeshifters, or monsters. I hate you, residential school, Dennis settlement, colonization, ripping things out and taking just, man, somebody stop me, I tell you. So before the arrival of Pākehā, one of our Māori seers, he said, "Hei tui te awe māpara he tangata ke māne e noho te taonei he mā. Behind the tattooed face, a stranger stands. He will inherit this world, and he is white." And so Peter Buck, he softened and he said, "Oh yeah, he will inhabit this land, and he is untattooed." Now that sounds pretty neutral, right? But we as Māori know he has no legitimacy, no identity, no purchase in a cultural sense. Right? What happened to where's his pepeha? What's his mountain? What's his waterway? Where's his whakapapa? What brings him from the Aotearoa and grounds him down here now? That's what he was really saying. Okay, you might know all that stuff, but hey, he Aotearoa, he tangata, he Aotearoa, he tangata. We have this capability to be great, to be connected or not. He Aotearoa, he Aotearoa. It is death. It is death. It is death. When our ancestors said that people will pass, but the land will remain, they never, ever, 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 ever had a single thought that humanity could ever threaten divinity. And it's another thing that I go with both of my Jedi brothers. When curriculum meets Te Ao Māori or indigenous way of viewing the world, there's always going to be a distortion because of this addiction to define abstract qualities. E ruka, taui huriki te taha, taui wiki, do not turn to the path outside. Patu ngaro te tangata toi te whenua. So that talks about the enduring presence of the land despite the transient nature of people. And it says our ancestors could not have anticipated the extent to which human actions could imperil the sacred essence of nature. He aitua, he aitua. And if we fail to recognize it, it's over. It is over. So there's this reciprocity and sustaining life. When we talk about that, about koha at the end there. So kowaikwe, who are you? Who are you? From what waterway do you descend? What's your pepeha? What's your identity? What's your connectivity to the land, the environment, and the ecosystem? How's mum? She's our mother. How's your mum? Where does your mum live? How is she? She got clothes? She fed? She warm? She watered? How's mum? That's our mum. Papa Tuanuku, the mother of all algorithms. Ka hoki o ki te tīmatanga ko e o matua kore ana kei te pū ko te weo ko te mora ko te aka. Ki he mauri ora. So, C.S. Lewis, pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our consciences, but shouts in our pains. It is the megaphone to rouse a deaf world. So this song, E Pātō Hau, is an account of a massacre. You know, Rangi is a church in 1864, not that long ago, and had abundance. We were exporting to Australia 400 loaves of bread a day. Oh, sorry, at one time in the oven, right? Māori Pāho, we lived there happily. The Anglicans were there, the Catholics were there, and it wasn't Ireland exactly, but they seemed to get on. It was peaceful. Then the British officers, they knew that, oh, look, there's only women and old people and children. Does it sound familiar? It was only women, old people, and children. Does it sound familiar? It was only women, children, and old people. Now, at the battle, our men had gone off to fight other fights, right? And so on that morning, the 21st of February, 1864, the pā was sacked and the British soldiers smashed the place, burnt the church while we were in church. And as the kids ran out on fire, they shot them. So the survivors fled and they went, but they got killed off by the diseases that they had contracted from the blankets that infested that. So here's the waiata. E pātoa he winiraro, he ho mai aroha, ke atangi atu au I konei, he aroha ki te iwi, ka momo tiki tā whitiki pāe rau, ko ai e ki te atu, kei hea aku hoi mu ara, I te tōnu I tanga, ka hara mai tēnei tātou e he, ka ranga I ti au. Yeah. This was our marae and Whaimaroa on the mountain, as you saw the sea. And during the war, the warmongers said, watch out for the yellow peril. So they smashed our big meeting house down to make an airdrome, to watch out for the yellow peril that never came with these bulldozers. My brother and I used to go floundering. See that symbol on the left there? That is a flounder, patiki. When it's perpendicular like that in the Milky Way, it's visible by the naked eye. It means that it's not a time for plenty, but as the cosmos move and it's parallel, then you can see that it's time for the harvest. So my brother's here. Surprise, I woke him up and said, brother, you might want to listen to this. He's my hero. I love him with all my heart. And yeah, we're out floundering again, my brother with the tilly lamp and the spear. We're going roaming and we've found some friends. We can bring them home with some bread and tea. But people pass and the land remains. So your koha, your gifting, the serendipity of even being here amongst you all, and I'm so honored to be here. I'm so honored to be here. And trust me, I risk everything to be here and speaking with you. It's serendipity that we have probably spelt it wrong, but I risked everything to be here in so many ways. But I'm glad to be here. Don't want me to be dramatic, but it's the truth. So the koha is tā koha, a tā is some print like a tattooed face. Yeah. It's possible to define places like the tax department. They want to know if there's revenue, man, how can we tax that? So I'm talking about aroha. Aroha is the key element to gifting in the Māori world. Aroha is composed of two key elements and lines of thought. Aroha is to move towards heart, the truth of who you are. There are no hidden corners. There are no hidden corners. They're not hidden forms. There's no half truths. You can't have half a truth. Right? And that can be defined as integrity, presenting as an open book and being guided as you move towards the essence of self-truth, internalizing your self-truth. You can't be truthful to the self. How the hell can you be truthful out there? That's true love. Right? And then koha is to spotlight something. Ko tainui te waka, my waka is tainui. Ko karioi te maunga, my mountain is karioi. Ko whaingaroa te moana, my motion and waterway is whaingaroa. Ko wainui te awa, my river is wainui. Yeah. Ko poihaka and te marae, my marae is to poihaka, and it goes on. So once again, the ha represents the true self of who you are, the real you. So that if you mash up this word called the spotlight with the ha, the energy, now you can pass it out. And that represents a disruption of time, energy, and resources. We willingly give to an individual, a collective, an organization, or a cause. So finally, and importantly, the sustainability of koha rests in reciprocity, receiving and giving in kind, forging ongoing relationships, and through mana, enhancing exchanges of mana, reputation, and brand. People hear your words, but they follow who you are. The transactions of koha atu, gifting out koha mai, koha atu, koha mai. The other partners don't quite get that. Māori have got flat noses because they come in through the aroha door, the gifting going, when we go back, bang, it's so hard. So, ko tā koutou mō koe tēnei, e mihi atu ana ki a koutou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. And it is such a pleasure and a humble pleasure to be in front of with you all and to be speaking on this platform and to be able to finish and start and finish with the words of my grandfather. Trust me, when I was a kid and he told me that, I thought, you can forget that. There's no way I'm going to. And now the boy is going up that platform that I shared with you. So I'll end with that karaki again. Tēnei au te hokaina I te hokaina ku te hokairangi. Te hokaina taku tūpu nā tāne nui a rangi te te ai te rangi tū hā ki te tehi o mano. I roko he nā tūrako I o matua kore ana. I riro anga ki to te wānanga ko te ke te tūauri, ko te ke te tūate, ko te ke te aronui. I tiri ai pau ai kia papatuna, ko kāputu tīre tangata ki te pai au tamarama. Ti hei maurio. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you so much, Piripi, immensely. Nephi and Andreas are here already. If Professor Glavovic is around, who is also one of the co-conspirators of the webinar, I invite him to join. He's also in New Zealand. If he can join with video. Immense incantation. I feel like both Nephi and you were really providing us a spoken word and sheer poetry in just manifesting the words. I will let them speak. I just wanted to ask you one thing, listening to you, and this is not the first time. I wonder if I'm too naive or if I am correct to believe that words themselves, even when I don't understand them, have an effect on my interiority. Is that okay to think and to believe that, you know, your words that you were pronouncing, even when I couldn't follow, they still enter into my interiority and heart and have an effect, even without understanding the meaning? So I feel like I believe that fully. I just wonder if I'm too naive.
You are so humble, my brother. You are so humble. Truth has a vibration, man. And as I look at it, you know, one of the things when I was a kid, because my English was terrible, right? And but I knew I was hungry. So I was dyslexic really in English, and I can hear you because I can undo your dyslexia in Māori. When we speak we speak a universal language. We all do. And again, you know, looking at this, I want to just get the lightsaber going left, right, and center when I tell you. It's it's a warm thing. So my point to you, my brother, of course you can feel it. Of course you can. You are it. It is you. It is us. It's all of us. I hope that's adequate as a response, brother.
Absolutely, it is. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll let Nephi and Andreas interject with whatever they feel like.
Yeah, I'd like to add, thank you for the prayers and sharing your language. It was very powerful. I too felt it. I was sitting there thinking of our own prayers in Apache and Navajo that I've heard, all my life and couldn't understand, but I could feel it. So I really appreciate your presentation. Thank you, brother.
Brother, thank you so much, man. I can't wait till we mix it up and go and do some good stuff out there, man. And Maori come from a long line of big eaters, brother. Can't wait to sit down at the table. Yeah. Andreas.
Yeah, I'm so moved. I'm so grateful. And it is so important that we do feel this, and that it happens and we feel it, and it makes me so happy that this is here, and we are in a scientific conference, and we're doing this. That's so powerful, because that's our, as you said, of course you feel it, you are it. It is all of us, that's what we can feel, what we can do, and what can call us back to do it. And so it's we have this organ to feel it, which is the heart. you also used the word, and it touched my heart, because there was power in it which touches the heart. So the heart can receive this, and the heart can give this. And if you encounter a butterfly flapping its wings at the end of summer, then it touches your heart as well. And that is what points us to the truth, and that's what we've been missing, and we need to find it. So we need to do it, and it has happened here, and that makes me so happy. And wonderful. And Dejan, it's so great that you ask for the permission to feel it, because you did, and we have this permission, and we need to, that's where we have to go. Yeah, thanks. So wonderful. Made me really happy. Made me also very sad, but it meets at some point.
Kia ora, Andreas. One of the things I usually have with our learners is we've got these colored lights, not traffic lights. And the black, after I finish it, black has got nothing, man. Red, between the darkness of the night and the white of the day. The darkness is our ancestors, and the women have the mana in that realm. It's a whole different story, man, I tell you. Intuition, everything. And then the red is the middle, where that joins night and day betwixt heaven and earth. That's our ancestors. Keep an eye on business. And then the green, that's when we've got it. And the green is to be our birds. They have green feathers, right? And the red feathers, they're a big deal to us. So you come from a little beep, 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 where you're just basically a little sewer that's hungry, right? And then when you fly and you see the feathers, you see the red as they open up. That's what you do. So if it's black, you got nothing. If it's red, you're getting there. And if it's green, you're flying with that. So that's my last little tip test. I got to confess something, man. When I was looking at the lineup, I said to Haimon, Simon, who got me linked up, I said, man, I don't mind being the frog in this deal. Because I was looking at the line. So I'm really glad and humbled to be amongst you all.
Honored to have you. I think we are beyond any academic professional webinar type of thing. I only regret that we can't use our skateboards here, but maybe some other place to meet at the ramps.
Our place is famous for surfing, Raglan on the west coast. Famous, world famous. Bring the boards.
Even better for us in the skateboards or on the coast surfings. I'll read one question from Bruce that was for Nephi, but it applies also to you, Piripi, in your opinion. First of all, Bruce says, Piripi, thank you for your gift. Your correro brings life to this webinar. I truly appreciate it. And now the question was originally for Nephi. I wonder if you might reflect on how you engage with the challenge of communal or collective emancipation amidst this violence. Beyond our personal journey, how do we contribute to our shared responsibility and collective struggle against these waves of violence?
Yeah, I saw that question and it was striking because it's the next wave of work for us. This first step that I was talking about in the messaging is the on the home front. The next wave is the at the policy level, at the decision-making level, and it really shows us how far we've got to go. So it's kind of hopefully amplifying the message to be able to make the larger impact on our world. I think keeping it simple is some of the best ways to do it. So keeping these concepts and themes in mind, in all different ways. A colleague of mine, Indigenous colleague of mine, used the phrase, "Our front lines are everywhere." So our front lines are in every institution, every power structure, every food label, every farm. There's every school and every age group. So we've got a lot of work to do, and liberation is multidimensional. So I feel like how we contribute, we can make an impact in an everyday level, but in our local environments, that's kind of what I put in there where it says place-based renewal. We got to, develop strategies and approaches to be able to make that happen in our regions first and create models to carry it out. So having a sense of courage and responsibility, I think is very important because it's scary. It threatens our livelihood sometimes. It really does because we're challenging the norm. So be courageous, operate according to principle, and push forward. You're not alone.
Beautiful, clearly said.
I'd like to just add to grab onto the hairs of my brother's legs and the coattails and come back with the finisher on that. and say that we have a saying, e hara taku toa I te toa takitahi. I do not stand alone. I didn't just land on top of the mountain. There was a whole legacy that came here to go through our kids' legacy, and we're all part of that legacy. And will never, ever, ever, ever go away. Ever. The bloodline of nobility will always continue. And, we can have all of the noise in the world and everything else. I also want to make a real big point here. When I'm talking about the white guys, I'm talking about an ideology, right? And brother Nephi, we're all brothers and sisters under the sun and under the skin. That was at home. Tui airunga, tui airaro, tying everything above, tui airaro below, tui airoto within, tui aiwa and without. Karongo te po, because all of our ancestors come here. Karongo te ao. And so does our environment. And the question really remains, can we hear?